Hello and welcome to InterSoul Leadership Community. And this is where we talk about all things regarding leaders, how we as leaders can aspire to become better leaders, how we can become even more agile in how we approach our assignments, keeping the main thing, keeping things underway, moving while we're introducing new things or challenges, and even how we're showing up in the faces and the places and from the perspective of the people who we're leading. And then there's those leaders who are not the senior leaders but have an assignment. How do you adapt to the fact that you have senior leaders or people above you and they may not be interacting with you as you would like, or you're wanting to get even more out of that relationship? This is all things leadership. I am so happy today to have with me a new friend, Natasha. Welcomes. She's been introduced to me from another friend, and she and I just hit it off when we met. And she brings a lot of wealth. She is an educational professional, as well as specifically in the space of English as a second language. And so I want to welcome you, Natasha, to InterSoul Leadership.
Thank you very much, Miss Owens. And of course, my last name is Welcome, so I'm always welcome. Thank you so
Always.
much for having me on this show. I'm very excited for what we can do together today.
Awesome. So I know I shared a little bit about what you do, but you have the floor to share what you do and who you do it with and how it's benefiting those clients.
Okay, so my name is Natasha Welcome, as mentioned before, and I'm an adjunct professor as well, an adjunct ESL professor. So it means that I teach English as a second language. And then I thought of a way of meeting my students outside of the classroom, because I see in the classroom that there is need for these students to be met even outside of the classroom. So I started a consulting agency, Metamorphosis Education Consultants, and I began consulting with schools and corporations to better acclimate English language learners. So basically, my audience would be schools and corporations. And I've been doing a lot in the corporation space lately because there are many managers, middle managers, supervisors who have people who speak English as a second language as a part of their team. And while language diversity should be an asset, sometimes if we don't know how to handle it, it can act as a liability. So I've been helping in those areas as well.
That's so awesome because everybody, I know in corporations, we are bringing in a lot. We have a lot of consultants joining our teams. We have more and more people coming into the workplace that really do have some unique perspectives on life. And we want to incorporate all of that into what we're doing, into the collaboration space, into the innovation space, even into building out the vision. So what unique challenges do leaders have in supporting people with English as a second language?
Yes, people who speak English as a second language usually face several challenges. One first challenge that is very obvious is that they do not know as much English as is needed for the workplace. So there is that language deficit, but then there's also other challenges that come with that. Like, for example, sometimes microaggression, sometimes treat people are treated differently because they have an accent or because, they're not very eloquent with English language. So speaking of that, I just finished a little talk on Disrupt HR, and it was entitled Beyond Accents, How Multilingual Learners Can Be the MVP of Your Team, because I realized that lots of multilingual learners go through lots of struggles. So yes, so they face microaggressions, and they face sometimes, that language barrier, and the confidence of speaking the language. And sometimes, even when you're learning a second language, you can be really great in private, but when you're under pressure, then it can really be difficult. So that's one thing I want people to understand generally, that someone might know sufficient English or might know a lot more English, when they're just practicing privately. But put under pressure, it's difficult to sometimes, find the correct word. And then we have to match, English can be it's not very easy, even for English speakers.
That's right.
And when you have to find the correct word and match the correct verb with the correct subject, and you're under pressure because you have to bring correct information at work. So it takes a lot of training and a lot of getting used to.
Yeah, that is so, so good. I love the Beyond the Accent title. That is a really, really great title. And I've heard leaders, really almost diminish the value of a person just because English is not their first language. And I know that's not true, because everybody brings value, and that doesn't always equate to their skill level when they understand their assignment and things like that. So how can organizations or cultures create a more welcoming environment so that we get the opportunity to benefit from the value that everyone brings, including those with English with a second language? And I know that's asking you a whole universe of answers, but can you just touch on just a few, how we can really make that a win-win for everyone?
Yeah, first of all, when someone speaks English as a second language, when they're an English language learner, first of all, we first have to realize that they're a human, first of all. We have more in common than we have different. But quite often we run straight to the deficit and say, they don't speak English, or they don't know sufficient English, and we run to that part only. But that person is a whole human. Yes. And everything that makes up a human is what makes up that person as well. They have likes and dislikes, just like us. Right. They are a mom, a dad, a father, a son. They have children just like us. They have all these attributes. They're just like us. We're all the same, but only some people speak a different language. And so if we could understand that and break that whole deficit barrier, we understand that it doesn't make someone totally different because they speak another language. Right. It just means that they're learning English. They're sometimes very fluent in their language and very efficient in their language. They're just learning another language all over again. So to understand that is a really great starting point. And next thing is to respect other cultures, because where there's language barrier, there's also a cultural barrier. And so if we learn to respect other culture and get that cultural piece in, where we understand that, the world has more views than our little culture, right. Our Western culture, there's a lot more views out there. There are lots more cultures with a lot of richness, a lot of diversity. If we learn to understand that, then we'll just understanding that and respecting people's culture is a good place to start. And then when you begin to respect people's culture, then you'll do things like appreciate the things they celebrate, appreciate the way they speak, ask them about their culture. That's a wonderful place to start. Ask them, show interest in their culture, show interest in the things that they eat, the food they eat, the clothes they wear. Why do you sing that type of music? And what do you do on Christmas Day? Like inquire about people's culture. When you talk about someone's culture or about their language, when you ask them about these things, they feel very, very valued and they feel very accepted. And so that's a great, great place to start. And I must say that culture is much deeper than language and food and music. Those are just the leaves of culture. The roots of culture go so much deeper than that. It's the things we talk about, the things we don't talk about, the things
Mhm.
we laugh at, the things we don't laugh at. So all those things, it takes a lot of getting to know someone's culture. It will take some time, but if you start understanding that they're human, everyone is human, and we all have
Yes.
similar characteristics, and with that respect, I think it goes very, very far away.
I love what you're saying because if we're being really honest, that really needs to happen with everyone. And what
Yes.
I hear you saying is, let's slow down
Mm-hmm.
enough to learn each other, to appreciate each other's differences. Different doesn't mean bad, different means enriched.
Mm.
That's how I look at
Yeah,
it. And this is so speaking to my first chapter in my one of my books, No Bosses Allowed, Lead to Serve and Transform. That first chapter talks about the individual matters. And
I
it
love it.
talks to that leader about you matter because sometimes leaders feel like they don't matter and nobody cares
Mm.
and I just got to be there for everyone else. But every person on your team matters. Every
Yes.
person in your sphere of influence, they matter. And if we approach it that way, and in that chapter, I talk about get to know their community, what matters to them, what's important in their community.
Oh, that's so
And
much, so very similar. Look at
yeah,
that.
I know, right? And so it's like, but it's we really need to do that for all of us because we
Yes, for
just
all
go
of
so
us. Yep.
fast. We
Mm.
just go so fast, and we just assume we know what
Mm-hmm.
the lifestyle of someone is, or we
Mm-hmm.
assume what's important to them, or what that that their family dynamics can't be the same as my family dynamics because we are just so different. No, we
Mm-hmm.
do, as you said so eloquently, we do have more in common than
Of
than
course.
we think, and more in common than what we'll ever acknowledge. And
Yeah,
and the times when we start to acknowledge that will make us a really a better people all around for everyone, for
that is
everyone,
true. I
for
like that
everyone.
you mentioned being different doesn't mean that someone is lacking something. And I
Mhm.
love to say it this way: different doesn't mean deficient.
Right.
So yeah, different doesn't mean deficient, and we have these um, prejudgmental ideas in our head
Hmm.
sometimes about other cultures. Oh, this culture is like this and this culture is like that, and we lump everyone into one and think, but there's diversity in all of us.
Yes.
Even in specific groups of cultures, there's still diversity among that group. So we need to really understand the uniqueness of the human race and understand that, to get to know someone is not just to see that they are of this race or culture and then just say, oh, they're all like this. They come from that country, they're all like, no, because we wouldn't want that happen to us, right? So
Right.
I think that's only fair to give people a chance to and see the beauty that is in all of us.
Yeah. And Natasha, you may have heard this because I know if you've been in the corporate space and you've been out there serving so well, but I've heard this in my career. I don't really have time to do this. I don't really have time to learn my people. I just got to get it all done. And that is so, if anybody who has that mindset is so operating in a deficit, as you would say, because you have to make time. And making time is not all that difficult. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, go to lunch with somebody or
Mm-hmm.
in your one-on-one meetings if you have one-on-ones. If you don't, start having one-on-ones and start
Mm-hmm.
incorporating those conversations not only about your agenda but about really learning the people who are around you. Even in team meetings, you can have team meetings and start team meetings off with icebreakers or some general conversation that people are welcomed and invited to
Mm-hmm.
share. And you almost, in doing that, require everyone to share in a sense, not threatening or anything, but you make it so that everybody knows that, oh, everyone else is sharing, so I'm going to have to share in some, and so we can learn one another. So
Yeah,
it doesn't take all of this building all these major things or whatever to really get to know the individual so that together you can learn, because where there's greater trust, there's greater collaboration.
of
Where
course.
there's greater trust, there's
I
greater
love it.
collaboration. And
Yeah.
so if we are open to learning and to stepping into people's spaces, and here's another thing, is like if you step into a space and it's going down a road that maybe you're not feeling equipped to or you don't want to go down to, having empathy doesn't mean you have to get trapped in a rabbit hole
Yeah.
with someone. It just means you're just caring about the people and their communities that are around you. So how do you have you let me ask this question. Have you encountered leaders who are maybe not really open to doing this, or feeling like they're open but they feel just so overwhelmed with the task or at hand that they can't find ways or of
Yeah.
helping the folks with English as a second language?
Yeah, I have found, thank you very much for that question. It's very important. I have met leaders who are very overwhelmed and are very frustrated by not knowing what to do. And they're honest and they're well-meaning, but they're just frustrated. And so that's actually the problem that we solve at Metamorphosis Education Consultants. So I spoke at a conference only, I think it was last month. And at that conference, I was talking about building multilingual teams, and I was going through my slides like every conference workshop presenter does. I was going through my slides and I was teaching, but the participants were so hungry because they needed questions to be answered. They were asking questions that were to come in my slides, And I'm like, oh, I have that in my slides farther down. And, I was trying to say that. And then at one point, I'm like, you know what? Let's get rid of the slides. Let's just start. So I literally I get rid of the slides, and we just begin to talk, and they begin to ask questions concerning how do I meet this person? How do, we collaborate with someone, and, he or she has limited English. And so we just begin to talk, and they begin to ask questions. And that's what I find as a workshop that is very needful, rather than keeping the formality.
Yeah.
A workshop where everyone is a teacher and everyone is a learner, where we just sit down and discuss and get questions answered. So that was really awesome. And I really like that people were, that hungry to have their questions answered. So yes, lots of people are frustrated, and some of them are well-meaning people, They love the people that they interact with, but they're frustrated.
Yeah.
And yes, at some point, if you're a leader and you have someone, you detect that someone may not be understanding what you're saying, and it's a language barrier issue. You at some point, that person may need language training. They may need to learn may need to go to English classes. And I would encourage every person who is a manager or who is, working in corporate, wherever you are, if an employee have all the characteristics that you need to work with, that you need in the workplace, but they're lacking in this area. They just don't know English, but they're very fluent in their language, of course, and know everything that they should know. The most you can do is to help them out, help them out with, the needs, their language needs, and support them in their language needs. Make certain that you give them time off to, go to classes or do whatever. Also, with AI available, there is translation that is readily available as well. Translation is readily available for every language, but then there's also a cultural piece. That's some of the problems that we solve as well, because there's also a cultural piece that is very difficult to get by, even when you have a great translator, interpreter, sorry. So yeah, well, whatever you can do, just support the people who are there with you.
I love that. I didn't even think about AI having a role in helping to really overcome these challenges and things like that. So you do workshops. We know you're teaching ESL, English Second Language students. What other services do you offer?
Yeah, so I do speak at a lot of conferences, which leads into most time workshops, professional development. So yeah, that's what I do. I go into companies that need help in that area, who are frustrated and need help to build their multilingual teams, or if they have multilingual customers, like I've been doing some work in the medical space as well,
Mm-hmm.
medical practitioners who have multilingual patients. So
Mm.
yes, so that's what is very needful, and that's the problem that we solve. Um, First of all, having people understand the intricacy of language acquisition. Quite
Yeah.
often, monolinguals, I want to call us that way, monolinguals, if they hear someone say two sentences in English, they're like, oh, he knows English, he's pretending. But I just want to point this out. Someone can know to greet in English, or they can know to talk about school or talk about their
Right.
family in English, but it doesn't mean that they know to talk about airplane parts or their medical situation in English, because those are other vocabulary words, and that's a whole other different area. So never assume that someone is, because they speak a sentence or two, that they know English and they're pretending, and and we have these things that we have in our head about English language
Right.
learners.
Those biases, and we have biases about everything, right? And so
Yes.
we really need to lay them aside, put them down, stomp on them, burn them, throw them away, get rid of them,
Mhm.
so that we can really interact. And honestly, let's be truthful again, even in societies where we all speak the same language,
Mhm.
I might use one acronym and think you know what that is. I might use a phrase and think you know what it is, and it means something totally to you. So we just need to slow down, be patient with each other, learn each other, because we all bring value. So,
Yeah.
what brought you to this passion and this work?
So I've always been excited about language acquisition, and I've been an educator for over 20 years.
Mm,
Very first part of my educational journey was with early childhood students, and I was intrigued with first language acquisition because they are now learning to speak.
right.
Then I worked at an international school for 14 years, and I really fell in love with second language acquisition because there were students from 40 different countries and nationalities. And I really fell in love with, teaching English as a second language and seeing people acquire a different language than their mother tongue. So that's where I fell in love with ESL. And as I began to teach in the college, I realized that, you know what, the school is not the only place that these
That's
students
right.
need help. ESL
That's
students they go to the supermarket, they go to the
mm-hmm,
doctor, they go to the bank, they go everywhere.
mm-hmm.
And if we can find a way of reaching out to help them in every arena, it would be a great thing. That's when I began to expand and decided to do this. Yeah.
Well, thank you for accepting the call on your life, because I really think it is a call because it's huge. And I thank you for bringing this topic to light, because I think it's something that if more and more people reach out to you and really get the support that they need to give the support that their folks need, then we will get that diversity, that healthy culture that I talk about often, in leaders being agile and being able to keep things moving and be able to still support the people who are helping them to fulfill the vision. So, as we start to wrap up, where can people find you? Where can they find your information? How can they connect with you?
Okay, so I'm going to give my email right here. It's info at meconsultants, as in me, meconsultants.org. M actually is for metamorphosis and E is for education. So it's info at meconsultants with an S.org. And
And I'm sorry, we'll make sure we put all this in the show notes
yes,
too. Okay.
also, yes, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Are you also on Instagram or no?
Not on Instagram, on
Okay.
LinkedIn. Yeah,
Okay, LinkedIn, and you've given us your email.
yes.
Natasha, again, thank you so much for being a member of my community, because I'm sure that I believe everybody who I'm brought in contact with, that I'm going to either need them at some point, or we're going to need to be able to work and collaborate together.
I
So
think so.
so I'm so glad to have you. as a partner, and to be able to see what else is before us to do together, and serving leaders in this way, because it is a great need. It really is. So if you are a listener and you say this is awakening some needs, or to you and your organization, reach out to Natasha. I'm sure she's able to help you get on the right track, or be able to move your organization and increase in greater momentum to what you're trying to do, and how you're serving your clients, customers, and even your team, because it starts in house. If there's a verse that says charity begins at home and then spreads abroad, well, there's a saying that charity begins at home and spreads abroad. And so if you learn to treat your people, the people on your team, well, then they too will help you treat your clients and customers well. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of Intersoul Leadership.
Thank you.
Let me see.